Few games are as strange and complex as a Kojima title, but sometimes that weirdness too can be home to a beauty all to itself. And in the case of Death Stranding 2, there is a beauty unlike anything else. The type of game that everyone should play before they die. You know, I've always been a fan of this series. Despite how boring and divisive it can be at times, doing nothing more than walking from one location to the next trying not to fall over, but there really is just a certain serenity and joy falling into the trance that experience offers. And Death Stranding 2, well, it's more of the first game, but just better in almost every way. Environments are stunning and photorealistic at times, accompanied by sweeping and evocative music tracks that will spark something in your soul. Combat is much improved with countless gadgets and upgrades that you can get to make encounters more fun and interesting, and the story is easier to follow with some amazing payoffs by the end. Overall, it's just a really good and also different type of game, but where Death Stranding 2 really excels specifically is the art. Those slower moments when you're walking through a completely new environment and you're taken aback by what's happening around you as a swell of music envelops you completely. One moment you will be drenched in fear, holding your breath as you walk through a BT-infested zone covered in a red mist, and the next, coddled by the serenity of a sweeping ocean. It's a perfect example of how to use music in games to elevate the experience tenfold as well. And I honestly think using music in this way is one of the most overlooked things most studios are not doing that wouldn't even be hard and make their games so much better. But regardless, impressively enough as well, the rules and world building of this place never take a back seat either. As strange and otherworldly as things can get in Death Stranding, they all make sense in the context of the world. And it feels like the creators behind the game took great care in making sure every step you took mattered and made sense in its own little way. And really, Death Stranding 2 is just a perfect example of what games can be. Not every game has to be like Call of Duty or put into a specific gameplay-focused box. Not every title has to be a massive open world or a corridor shooter. Not every experience has to be a team-based arena shooter. Not every online game has to be an arena-based romp. Games are a medium too that excels in the weird. In ideas like being a delivery man who must make his way across an alien environment full of secrets. This title too is so much better at onboarding you into the gameplay quickly. Whereas the first title felt like it took forever to get going, and by the time it did, many people were too tired to care, this game holds no punches and immediately starts throwing you into the deep end. And the gameplay loop, as eccentric as it is really fun, where it's easy to get addicted and fall into the loop of doing multiple deliveries over and over again in order to upgrade and find new equipment that you can get out into the field in and use. So while Death Stranding, even in its second and much improved incarnation, is not for everyone, I think that everybody at least owes it to themselves to try this second installment, which shows us that games are their most compelling when guns aren't even being fired or swords swung. They are at their most compelling when they speak to us, at an intellectual and artistic level, making us feel things and contemplate ideas or just reminisce on the spectacles we've been through. I love games because I think they're the best form of art out there, and Death Stranding 2, well, it proves it. There's a reason immersive sims and RPGs are my favorite genres in video games. I find their complexity and systems-driven design to be infinitely more interesting than most other genres. And it's why I'm such a fan of the recent movement of making every single game have RPG or immersive sim-light elements. So it comes as no surprise that a game that masterfully combines both into potentially the greatest RPG ever created is yet another game I think everyone must play before they die. Baldurs Gate 3. First and foremost, this title lives and breathes reactivity. Every choice you make, no matter how big and small, can have drastic effects on the world around you. Choose to be an evil drow with magical powers? The goblins you encounter early on in Act 1 will be scared of you and let you through without a fight or any trouble at all. Choose to be a whimsical druid that can transform and talk to animals? Well, now hundreds of more options are opened up before you, with dozens of quests that can be solved by talking with and mingling with the local wildlife. But even more impressive, every single one of these encounters is fully voice acted, animated, and considered. I think everyone who plays this game for the first time has that moment in their playthrough where they try something wholly unexpected, the type of interaction that surely the game would not account for, and yet it does. With such a high level of presentation, it's almost astounding. It's the key ingredient that makes Baldur's Gate 3 a generational experience. And when you combine that with a systems-first design approach where every combat encounter and quest can be tackled in infinite ways, using items you pick up or the environment to your advantage, it becomes clear why this title is so beloved. More than any other Dungeons & Dragons adjacent games before it as well, Baldur's Gate 3 really does feel like the tabletop experience, with all the freedom and awe that comes along with it. By the end of it all, you will get the sense that you have been on a genuine journey, where along the way you might have lost party members or made difficult decisions whose ramifications only reveal themselves hours later. It's why I personally recommend, even on a first playthrough, you play on the Honor Mode difficulty setting, one where you are only given one save, and after every action you take, things are automatically overwritten, meaning the stakes become so high. When you know that losing your party member at a key moment in the story or battle could literally mean their loss forever, it makes every moment you experience in-game that much more riveting. But regardless of how you personally choose to play this game, it always finds a way to give back to you. One of my favorite examples of this was on one of my short stints of a playthrough early on, where I chose to be a gnomish mage shorter than most of the children in the first town. Not only did they make fun of me for this, but more interestingly, it allowed me to fit into a small hidden crevice near the Druid's Grove, which inside was home to a secret organization of conniving children who sought to steal for survival. I was able to walk in, talk to, and befriend the children, and dozens of hours later, find them again in Act 3, getting up to no good. It's stories like these that make Baldur's Gate 3 one of, if not the single greatest RPG ever made. One that really puts the role-playing back in role-playing games. Technically speaking, on any of my other playthroughs, if I got a shrinking spell or potion, I could have also made my way into that cave of thieving 12-year-olds. But it's the fact that something so significant and interesting can be missed that makes it more special. Even the main plot point of Act 1, the Goblin Camp versus the Druid Grove, can be tackled in endless ways. I mentioned before how if you're a drow, you can just walk your way in, as the goblins cower in fear. But what about infiltrating the camp with an invisibility potion and poisoning the drink supply? What about getting yourself locked in jail on purpose and breaking yourself and the druid's leader out? What if you instead side with the goblins and march your way to the grove to butcher innocent people? Or maybe the more traditional routes of talking your way through or going in guns blazing and killing everything in your path. Famously, you can even build a mile-long line of explosive barrels, which you can set off from far away, triggering a chain reaction that kills the entire goblin camp with a single fireball spell. Interactions like this are almost unheard of in most games. Even other RPGs I adore, like say Mass Effect, don't have nearly this level of awareness. In most games, choices simply come down to an A or B affair, a fork in the road where time stops and you get to make a decision in front of a dialogue box. But Baldur's Gate 3 is different. It's a soup of ever-changing decisions that fold against one another, transforming your play session into something you can truly call your own. And honestly, I don't even like the story of Baldur's Gate 3 all that much compared to many other RPGs I adore. And the unrelenting horniness of the characters has always rubbed me the wrong way. It makes them feel fake and artificial rather than real. But despite all of that, at the core of this game is a look into what I wish all RPGs, and really all games, could be. Because the special defining factor of games in the first place is that they can react to our inputs, and I wish more titles took this fact to heart. And speaking of reactivity, the next game everyone should play before they die once again proves how potent that formula really is. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of those games that it feels like you either love or hate. And for me, it's a weird relationship. On one hand, this game can sometimes be painfully boring, slow, and monotonous, especially at the start. I can't tell you how many times I had to try and pick this game up again because I stopped playing at some point in a playthrough. But on the other hand, when you're in the right mood, when you do finally set aside the time to dive into this Wild West and get immersed into what Rockstar has made here, then it becomes immediately clear why many regard this as the greatest game ever made. First of all, the story of Arthur Morgan is a masterpiece. In both writing and acting, full of twists and turns, but most of all at its core, a man that is rigid, yet broken inside. A story of a vagabond who was forced into brutality and anger at a young age to survive, who then must come to terms with the man he has become, with the world changing around him and the people he has hurt. Arthur's journey in Red Dead 2 is one of the most moving I've seen play out in a game, where the choices you make not only shape the man he becomes, but also, because of the powerful message, likely shape you as well. A tale about love, loss, violence, and well, redemption. And that's why, despite how slow the gameplay is often, it's when you get to these moments later in the game and the storytelling comes front and center that it all just makes sense. Red Dead Redemption 2 isn't supposed to feel fun all the time. It isn't supposed to easily take us through the story beat by beat, quest by quest. It's meant to be hard, slow, and unforgiving, just like the setting itself. Animals and NPCs react realistically to everything you do. Towns feel immersive and genuine with lifelike animations and daily operations, and the setting is the single most realistic depiction of an open world I've ever seen, with birds that have real migration patterns, coyotes that will hunt you down in packs, and horse physics that make the real thing look like a knockoff. It's obvious even at a glance that only Rockstar and their in-house Rage engine could have made this game, with an attention to detail that other studios could only wish to achieve. So if you're in the mood for something slow and brooding, that has huge payoffs by the end in both story and presentation, an homage to the great westerns of old, then look no further than Red Dead Redemption 2. There's a reason it's one of the highest selling games of all time, because everyone needs to play it before they die. There really is nothing out there like old school BioWare. They made some of the most formative years for many people growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, including Jade Empire, KOTOR, Mass Effect, and Dragon Age. But sadly, as of late, it feels like the studio has made nothing but failure after failure, including most recently, as of writing this, the release of Dragon Age: The Veilguard. This game was so crucially bad on so many levels for me that it quite literally, in retrospect, has ruined the entire Dragon Age franchise for me. I never liked the second game all that much anyways, but I thought Inquisition had a lot of heart, and even more notably, it's Dragon Age Origins that was really special. Because despite how old this title is now, and even knowing how bad the series becomes in its final entry, Origins on its very own is so good, so impactful, that it still sits among the pantheon of games that I think everyone should play before they die. And far and away the main reason for this is the world building. Maybe more than any other game I've played, Origins immediately dials you into the experience it's trying to give. At the onset of the story, you get to choose from a variety of origins, each with hours of unique content you will only get to see on those playthroughs. And through each of these origins, you get to see exactly how the world works too. For instance, on my first playthrough as a mage, I was thrown into the Fade right away from the beginning, where I learned about demons, the Circle of Magi, and the adversarial Templar Order. Rather than being delegated to book entries in the world like most games, the main character and thrusting force of the narrative was constructed around the rules of the world and the fascinating lore. A setting where magic has actual bounds and rules, where kingdoms have come and fallen, and darkspawn, hellish brutes from the underground, have risen again to take over the world. The stakes, as in many fantasy games, are high, but through each step you take in this world, you're grounded too in the familiarity of the politics and customs you've already learned before. Every single quest, every single NPC has something interesting pertaining to the rich history on offer here, including entire towns that give you a chance to just walk around and get immersed in it all. Whereas a lot of other series tend to focus on just storylines or characters, everything in Dragon Age, to me at least, feels like it's built around lore and world building, which to me is just such a more interesting driving force when playing a game. It's funny too, because by many accounts, the combat, gameplay, and moment-to-moment systems in this title are inferior to the games that come after it. So while I personally love the combat and how deep it can get, I do understand why, especially nowadays, most people wouldn't. And yet, on the same token, that isn't what makes this game compelling anyways. It's the writing and lore that carry it for potentially the hundreds of hours you will spend with it. Introductions to things like the dwarves and their massive underground cities and advanced technologies that later entries touch on and explain, but never to the same level or quality of intrigue. It goes to show that gameplay and graphics aren't what make a game eternal. It's the mature writing, imaginative world building, and dark fantasy themes that make Dragon Age Origins, even to this day, the best the series has been. And when you add on top of that the deep RPG mechanics and build crafting that will push you to your limit in hard boss fights, it's no wonder many people to this day regard Dragon Age Origins as the greatest RPG ever made. I've controversially on this channel over and over again argued that games now are better than they've ever been. That squabbles about old games being better are nothing more than ramblings of those who hate their lives now more than before, and long to be back in their younger years where anger hadn't taken hold yet. However, if there were one game that proves me wrong, it's got to be Dragon Age Origins. A title that certainly now shows its age, but nonetheless is an experience everyone should play before they die, because it not only reveals the extent to how impressive primetime BioWare was, but shows great writing and world building are the keys to making a game world everlasting. It's a shame that the series gets ruined by the Veilguard later, but this first entry shows just how much potential there truly was that now might be tainted forever. When talking about games that everyone needs to play before they die, one of the first thoughts that comes to my head, and I'm sure many of you as well, is Portal 2. Built during the heyday of Valve, Portal as a series is instrumental not only due to the fact that it's so accessible to a wide range of audiences, but because it's just one of the best games ever made, full stop. I distinctly remember my first time playing it as a young kid and being amazed at just how fun and funny it was. Every level brings new challenges and obstacles, with puzzles that force you to think, but nothing so overbearing the fun is ever lost. And I've always been a sucker for these types of games anyways, which is why I love more recent things as well, like the Talos Principle and its sequel. But Portal truly is in a league of its own when it comes to the presentation. Characters like Wheatley and GLaDOS are so memorable because they're funny, witty, and tragic, written in a way where every moment they are on screen is a joy. In fact, even within minutes of booting this game up, you will be treated to Wheatley's hilarious mannerisms as an entire room opens up before you in a dazzling spectacle and you are let loose on the world. Because you see, Portal first and foremost is just fun. It's a game centered around the idea of having a good time, solving different puzzle rooms, and talking to fun characters while you piece together the mysteries of Aperture Laboratories. And even to this day, with no updates to this game for decades, it still manages to be far and away one of the most enjoyable experiences in gaming. And also, it's the type of game that really anyone can enjoy. Someone who has never even played a game before could sit down and within an hour fall in love with Portal. And when you add on the fact that this installment has couch co-op as well, you realize how instrumental this title must have been in a lot of people falling in love with the medium. I love other co-op games too, like Split Fiction or It Takes Two, but something about Portal 2's simplicity, those endless white walls or concrete jungles, those simple blue and orange portals, the hilarious writing. It all comes together into a package that was revolutionary for its time, and even so many years later, stands tall amongst the giants that have come after. There's a reason Portal 2 is one of the highest rated games of all time. One of the few where almost every system comes together perfectly to craft an ensemble that sings while you play. Even talking about it here, I think back to some of my favorite levels in the game where you have to use acceleration to make long jumps, or time where you place your portals to move objects in 3D space. Just so many cool ideas and puzzles that will make you feel good after solving them and never outstaying their welcome, constantly building upon one another as you go from one level to the next. Pure fun. Something I think most gamers are looking for, but it sometimes can be so hard to find. So if you haven't already, I promise you, playing Portal 2 will be well worth your time. If you ask most people what the best FPS campaign in games of all time was, they probably would say something like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 1 or 2, or maybe even Halo 3, a personal favorite of mine. But while both these games are amazing in their own right, practically raising me as a kid with the amount of time I spent in them, there actually is one other FPS campaign that I think is even better than all of them. An experience so good that everyone owes it to themselves to try it at least once before they die. Titanfall 2. It's a campaign that can be beaten in as little as 4 hours, but within this short time frame is wall-to-wall action, set pieces, and spectacle. There literally is not a single moment in this short main story where I was not having fun. Every single mission is unique and interesting, every firefight engaging, and on top of all of this, Titanfall 2 has one of, if not the single greatest movement system in a game ever made, where with enough skill you can wall run and climb across massive distances in seconds. And whenever you're in a mech, you will unlock a variety of abilities that help you traverse and kill as well. But even more than any of that, it's what happens in some of these missions makes me remember this game so fondly. In one specific one, you have to parkour your way up a shifting building in real time. In another, you must fight in midair during a ship battle. And potentially most impressive, an entire sequence dedicated to time travel where you can shift between reality on the fly as you shoot and move. It really feels like the designers behind Titanfall 2 said yes to everything that sounded cool, and somehow managed to combine it all into one cohesive package that feels right. And you know, I've always argued that in games, there's often too much filler. Nowadays, every other title wants to be an open world with side quests and objectives. But oftentimes, these objectives are nothing more than half-assed storytelling and time wasting, with no huge payoff in terms of gameplay or lore. In Titanfall 2's case, though, it is the antithesis to this, and it couldn't be any further from the truth. Where rather, it seems like anything that wasn't immensely fun in the moment was cut, and what we're left with instead is wall-to-wall joy throughout. I've seen a lot of people online argue that $60, $70, $80 for a game that only lasts 4 hours like Titanfall 2 is never worth it, because they wouldn't think they got their money's worth for that price. But for me, it's all about quality over quantity. Those 4 hours in the campaign of Titanfall 2 are so good, so much better than the competition, that I really do think it's worth it. Would you rather spend 100 hours in the most recent Assassin's Creed only to realize that essentially you wasted all that time? Or would you rather spend 4 hours in Titanfall 2 with an experience that will last with you for years? If you ask me, the latter would be a much better spend of $80 than the former. And that's why I think everyone should play this game. It shows perfectly why less is more, why a focus on quality over quantity can be so beneficial, and more than anything, just how badass and awesome the Titanfall series is, and why we desperately need another. The combat is crisp, the movement is exhilarating, and the character is endearing, all in a package that you can get right now and beat in an afternoon. If you haven't already, do yourself a favor and dedicate just one day to this amazing campaign that in 4 hours can leave a mark that lasts with you forever.